What if the person who makes you feel most wanted is also making it harder for you to become who you were created to be? Think carefully. Someone can awaken your emotions and weaken your direction at the same time. They can make your heart race while causing your purpose to stand still. That is why feelings must never be given a responsibility they were not designed to carry. Consider a vehicle. Chemistry can start the engine. You hear the sound, feel the power, and become excited about the journey. But can the engine choose the destination? No. Can it steer the vehicle? No. Can it determine whether two passengers are traveling toward the same future? Absolutely not. An engine supplies energy. It does not supply direction. Write this down. Energy without direction produces movement, but not necessarily progress. What is chemistry? Chemistry is immediate attraction. It is emotional energy, easy conversation, shared laughter, and the pleasure of being noticed. Chemistry says, I enjoy being with you. But what is alignment? Alignment is agreement between two lives concerning direction, principles, character, and responsibility. Alignment asks, can we build responsibly together? Those are not the same question. Some people know how to excite your personality but do not know how to respect your assignment. They enjoy your presence but resent your discipline. They applaud your dream until the dream requires sacrifice. They love your attention but compete with your growth. So do not confuse being desired with being directed wisely. Here is the governing law for this entire teaching. Say it aloud. Chemistry may introduce a person, but purpose must determine their access. Say it again. Chemistry may introduce, purpose must determine access. Now, this is not an attack on romance. Attraction is valuable. Romance is beautiful. Chemistry may be the reason you begin asking questions, but it cannot be the reason you stop asking them. Attraction is an invitation to investigate, not a certificate of compatibility. Before you grant someone influence over your future, 5 areas must be examined: identity, destination, principles, character, and contribution. Who are you without this relationship? Where are both of you going? What standards govern your choices? What does pressure reveal about your character? And what does each person consistently strengthen in the other? Feelings can open an inquiry, but feelings cannot deliver the verdict. Now that attraction has been placed in its proper role, we must examine what chemistry can genuinely reveal and what it is completely unable to prove. An exciting ignition tells you that power is present. That is all it tells you. It does not tell you whether the brakes will work when danger appears. It does not tell you whether the steering is dependable when the road bends. It does not tell you whether the driver is disciplined or whether the two of you even intend to arrive at the same place. Do you understand? The sound of the engine is real, but it is incomplete evidence. Attraction can reveal desire. It can reveal enjoyment. It can show that two people respond warmly to one another. But attraction cannot prove faithfulness. It cannot prove self-control. It cannot prove humility. It cannot prove responsible communication. And it certainly cannot prove steadiness under pressure. Why? Because chemistry is experienced in a moment, but character is revealed through a pattern. Dating often gives people an opportunity to present their preferred image. Everybody cleans the vehicle before inviting someone to ride in it. The music is right. The conversation is pleasant. The best manners come out. Even people who never arrive anywhere on time will reach that restaurant 20 minutes early. But ordinary life eventually removes the presentation. Bills arrive. Plans change. Feelings get hurt. A correction must be received. A sacrifice must be made. That is when habits begin speaking louder than promises. Write these distinctions down. Attention is not accountability. Availability is not reliability. Similarity is not shared responsibility. Intensity is not intimacy. Say that last one again. Intensity is not intimacy. A person can spend hours talking to you and still be unable to tell you the truth responsibly. Someone can enjoy your personality and resist the discipline required by your purpose. They may admire your ambition until your ambition requires focused time. They may praise your standards until those standards tell them no. They may celebrate your future until building that future requires them to surrender convenience. So what is the principle? A declaration is a claim. Conduct under pressure is evidence. I will always support you is a claim. What happens when support becomes inconvenient? You can trust me is a claim. What happens when honesty becomes costly? I respect your purpose is a claim. What happens when your assignment competes with their appetite for attention? Trust cannot be manufactured by romantic language. It develops as character is tested through time, inconvenience, correction, disappointment, responsibility, and competing desires. You do not learn what people value only by hearing what they praise. You learn what they value by observing what they protect when something must be sacrificed. Now examine yourself honestly. Have you been evaluating what this person says during pleasant moments, or what they consistently do when patience is required? Are you studying promises or patterns? Excitement or evidence? Powerful feelings may be completely sincere and still be insufficient for a sustainable partnership. Sincerity does not transform emotion into proof. And if chemistry cannot choose wisely by itself, the next question is not merely, who is this other person? The next question is more personal. Do I know who I am before I choose them? If you do not know who you are, almost anyone who makes you feel valuable can become attractive. If you do not know where you are going, almost anyone willing to travel with you can appear compatible. That is the root problem. When purpose is unclear, appetite becomes the decision maker. Pain begins choosing. Loneliness begins choosing. Rejection begins choosing. The need to be admired begins choosing. And when an unhealed need chooses for you, it does not ask whether a person belongs in your future. It only asks whether that person can relieve your discomfort today. Follow me carefully. Imagine two people entering a vehicle, both excited to be together. The engine is running, the music is playing, they are laughing. Then someone asks, where are you going? One says, I do not know. I just did not want to travel alone. The other says, I do not know either, but at least we like each other. That sounds romantic until the road divides. You cannot measure alignment without direction. If neither person has identified a destination, they are not building a journey, they are sharing movement. And movement without purpose can carry two sincere people very far in the wrong direction. Wanting companionship is human, but wanting companionship is not the same as being ready for partnership. Readiness means you possess enough identity, discipline, and responsibility to evaluate access wisely. The fear of being alone must never become the standard by which another person is allowed to influence your decisions. Why? Because unmet needs alter definitions. Attention begins to look like love. Control begins to look like protection. Dependency begins to look like loyalty. Immediate relief begins to look like long-term provision. The need is so loud that discernment can no longer hear clearly. A wounded heart often asks, will this person stay? Purpose asks a different set of questions. Does this relationship strengthen my faithfulness? Does it increase my focus? Does it respect discipline? Does it produce peace and responsibility? Not everyone who stays helps you grow. Some people stay because your weakness gives them a role they do not want to lose. Now, before you audit the other person, audit yourself. That is where maturity begins. Who are you? What convictions govern you? What habits are you developing? What gifts are you responsible for? What duties already belong to you? And what hunger inside you is attempting to negotiate your standards? Write this exercise down. First, complete this sentence in one clear line. The life I am responsible to build is a life that. Then underneath it, list the disciplines that life requires. Prayer, learning, financial stewardship, health, service, focus, responsible family relationships, honest communication. Whatever your assignment demands, name it. Purpose is not merely a career. It is not a title, a platform, or public applause. Purpose governs how you serve, how you manage resources, how you treat family, how you grow in faith, and what kind of person you must become to carry your responsibilities well. A partner cannot manufacture that identity for you. A relationship may support your development, but it must never become the source of your existence. Tell yourself, I must know my direction before I surrender my discretion. Once you know the road you are responsible to travel, you can finally distinguish between someone who merely admires the destination and someone prepared to share the journey. Somebody can love hearing about your dream and still resent the life required to build it. They become excited when you describe the destination. They applaud the vision. They tell everybody this person is going somewhere. But when going somewhere requires study, restraint, budgeting, patience, service, or postponed comfort, suddenly the applause becomes complaint. Why? Because they love the picture of the future but never accepted the price of the future. Write this distinction down. Celebration is emotional approval. Participation is responsible contribution. Celebration speaks well of the destination. Participation helps manage the road. Celebration says, I believe in you. Participation asks, what must we organize so that what we believe can actually be built? Now, a suitable partner does not need to possess your gift. They do not have to perform your role, imitate your personality, or surrender their own assignment. But they must respect the demands attached to your purpose. If your assignment requires focused time, they cannot interpret every hour of concentration as rejection. If it requires financial discipline, they cannot sabotage the budget and then call you controlling. If it requires seasons of patience, they cannot create an emergency every time gratification is delayed. What does a builder look like? A builder asks responsible questions. A builder honors focused time. A builder tells you the truth without trying to own you. A builder carries agreed responsibilities. A builder protects the shared environment from unnecessary disorder. And please understand this. Builders do correct plans. Agreement does not mean silence. A wise partner may challenge your method, question your timing, or expose a weakness you did not see. But correction from a builder has a different spirit and a different result. It does not attack your identity. It strengthens the structure. Criticism drains confidence and walks away. Correction accepts responsibility for helping the outcome stand. Say this aloud. A partner is not merely an admirer. A partner is a contributor. But contribution must be mutual. You are not searching for a personal savior, a manager, an unpaid rescuer, or somebody to blame whenever you neglect your own development. Each person must remain responsible for personal growth, decisions, habits, and consequences. Helping walks beside responsibility. Carrying replaces responsibility. When one adult continually carries what the other refuses to manage, partnership slowly becomes dependency. Think of the future household as a shared enterprise. Decisions about time, money, work, caregiving, and risk do not affect only the person making them. If a decision can shake the whole house, the whole partnership deserves honest consultation. You cannot build unity through unilateral control. One person cannot keep steering while refusing to tell the other where the vehicle is going. Now take out your notes and complete 2 sentences. First, my purpose requires these sacrifices from me. Be specific. Time, training, financial restraint, service, patience. Then write, a partnership with me would require these honest expectations. Do not advertise a dream while hiding its cost. You are not merely asking whether someone enjoys the idea of your future. You are asking whether both of you can create a stable environment in which that future can responsibly grow. And participation cannot be measured by enthusiasm alone, because when real decisions arrive, the hidden operating system of every relationship is its values. A destination tells you where the relationship intends to go. Values determine how the two of you will travel. You may agree on the destination and still destroy the journey because you disagree about the rules of the road. What are values? Values are the standards you continue to honor when desire offers an easier option, when convenience invites compromise, when money creates pressure, and when popularity rewards disobedience. Anybody can announce a value when it costs nothing. The real value appears when keeping it requires sacrifice. Values may begin personally, but they never remain private in a close relationship. Why? Because values produce decisions. Repeated decisions become habits. Shared habits create culture. Culture is simply the atmosphere your repeated choices produce. Write this down. Romance gives you moments. Values build the environment in which those moments must live. Now let us make this practical. There are 6 areas where hidden incompatibility eventually becomes visible. Time, money, faith, family, work, and conflict. Start with time. Does this person respect discipline, focus, or do they demand constant interruption as proof of love? If every boundary is interpreted as rejection, purpose will always be forced to compete with insecurity. Love should not require you to neglect every priority just to demonstrate affection. Then there is money. How do you spend? How do you save? How do you give? How do you handle debt, risk, and delayed gratification? Money exposes values quickly because money forces choices. And any financial decision that can endanger a shared household requires honest consultation. You cannot conceal a major obligation, expose another person to the consequences, and call that independence. That is not independence. That is disorder wearing expensive shoes. Now consider work. Does one person honor responsibility while the other repeatedly avoids it? Can ambition be discussed without arrogance? Can rest be practiced without laziness? Can risk be evaluated without one person gambling with the other person's peace? A shared future cannot be managed wisely when one person creates consequences and expects the other to absorb them. What about faith? Is faith merely language used during emotional moments, or does it govern conduct? Does it shape boundaries, service, honesty, humility, and decisions made when nobody is applauding? Spoken conviction is not yet established conviction. A principle becomes credible when it survives pressure. Then examine family obligations. How will parents be honored? How will children or other dependents be cared for? Who receives access to the household? What values will govern the atmosphere under that roof? Family is not only a private romance expanded, it is a community of responsibility. The choices of two adults can eventually shape the security, habits, and convictions of many others. Finally, examine conflict. Everybody can appear compatible when everybody agrees. What happens when you disagree? Does the conversation produce truth, listening, ownership, and repair? Or does it produce manipulation, withdrawal, contempt, guilt, and control? Conflict does not create your values. Conflict reveals them. Take out your notes and write 5 principles you refuse to trade for companionship. Do not begin with another person's claims. Begin with your own constitution. What governs your honesty? Your money, your faith, your treatment of family, your behavior under pressure. Say this aloud. My standards must be clear before my emotions are strong. Shared attraction may begin a romance, but shared values determine the culture that romance will reproduce. Chemistry may create a beautiful evening. Values decide what ordinary mornings will feel like years later. And when values conflict repeatedly, the damage does not always arrive in one dramatic collapse. It often begins quietly, through the gradual erosion of purpose. Purpose is rarely lost in one dramatic moment. More often, it disappears through small permissions. One abandoned discipline, one silenced conviction, one boundary surrendered to avoid an argument, one dream reduced so another person will not feel threatened. The vehicle does not always leave the road through a violent collision. Sometimes the steering shifts only a little, but remain off course long enough, and a small deviation becomes a different destination. So watch for the quiet signs. The first sign is that you begin shrinking your ambitions. You stop studying. You neglect your gifts. You abandon healthy routines because every act of growth is interpreted as rejection. Your focus becomes an offense. Your discipline becomes a rival. You spend more time proving your affection than developing your assignment. Love should encourage growth, not demand stagnation as evidence of loyalty. The second sign is concealment. You hide an opportunity because you dread the interrogation. You minimize progress to avoid jealousy. You soften a conviction because you expect ridicule. You stop sharing prayerful direction because every new possibility becomes another emotional trial. Now, privacy can be wise, but hiding healthy growth because another person punishes your progress is not peace. It is adaptation to disorder. The third sign is that you repeatedly apologize for boundaries. You say no, they become disappointed, and suddenly you feel guilty for managing your own time, energy, or responsibility. Eventually, their emotional reaction begins steering your decisions. Hear this carefully. You are responsible for speaking with kindness and acting with integrity. You are not responsible for manufacturing another adult's approval. The fourth sign is chronic rescue. You keep explaining, correcting, reminding, covering, and absorbing consequences that belong to the other person. Their responsibilities become your emergency. Their refusal to grow becomes your full-time occupation. Meanwhile, your own field receives no water. Helping walks beside someone who accepts responsibility. Carrying attempts to live their life for them. Helping develop strength. Carrying can preserve immaturity. The fifth sign is recurring disorder. You are always confused, always defensive, always exhausted, always recovering. The relationship consumes enormous energy but produces little maturity. You call it passion because it is intense. You call it commitment because it is difficult. But difficulty alone does not prove depth. Now, do not become careless with this teaching. Every disagreement is not misalignment. Every demanding season is not a reason to leave. Two responsible people can face grief, financial pressure, disappointment, or major transition and still preserve honesty, accountability, peace, and shared effort. The question is not, is this relationship ever difficult? The question is, what does difficulty repeatedly produce? Some pressure develops character. Other pressure bends you away from conviction. Constructive conflict produces truth, repair, maturity, and deeper trust. Destructive conflict repeatedly erodes clarity, discipline, confidence, and inner order. Take your notes and make 3 columns. In the first, write who I was becoming before this relationship. In the second, who I am becoming within it. In the third, the repeated patterns producing this change. Do not record one bad afternoon. Study the pattern and examine yourself too. Are you growing in responsibility or blaming the relationship for work you have refused to do? Discernment must include honesty about both people. Love does not require you to surrender personal responsibility. Compassion can remain while access changes. Kindness can remain while a boundary is established. You can care about someone without permitting their disorder to govern your direction. Recognize erosion before years of chaos are renamed passion, loyalty, or endurance. Diagnosis, however, is not the destination. Diagnosis must become decision. So now we will gather every principle into one disciplined 5-part audit. Now we come to the audit. Do not complete this audit in a hurry, in the middle of an argument, or while trying to defend a decision you have already made. Complete it slowly. Complete it prayerfully. Complete it honestly. The purpose is not to make you suspicious of everybody. Suspicion searches for guilt. Discernment searches for truth. This audit prevents appetite from rushing a decision that wisdom must examine. Write down 5 words: identity, destination, principles, character, contribution. The first audit is identity. Who are you without this relationship? Who is the other person without you? What gifts are you developing? What responsibilities are already in your hands? Can both of you stand emotionally without requiring constant reassurance? Or has one person become responsible for making the other feel valuable every hour? A relationship should encourage responsibility, not replace identity. If one person must continually rescue, regulate, motivate, and validate the other, that is not 2 people standing together. That is one person carrying another person's undeveloped selfhood. Ask yourself, am I becoming more responsible in this relationship or more dependent? Am I growing or merely becoming more attached? Identity does not reject support. Identity simply refuses to make another human being the source of its existence. The second audit is destination. What kind of life is each person trying to build? Do not answer only with a job title. Address faith, work, service, family, stewardship, health, and personal development. Now separate 3 things: agreements, negotiable differences, and opposing directions. You may prefer different music, food, or routines and still build well together. Those may be negotiable differences. But if one person desires disciplined stewardship while the other refuses financial responsibility, that is not a minor preference. If one person is committed to service and family responsibility while the other views every obligation as interference, you may be looking at opposing directions. Return to the vehicle. Are you moving at different speeds along the same road, or are you forcing 2 destinations into one vehicle? Different speeds require patience and communication. Opposing destinations eventually require somebody to abandon the journey. The third audit is principles. What standards govern your time, money, sexuality, truthfulness, work, family obligations, conflict, and boundaries? Do not accept attractive answers without lived examples. Anybody can say, I believe in honesty. Ask what honesty cost them recently. Anybody can say, family matters. Ask how they behave when caring for family becomes inconvenient. Anybody can praise boundaries until a boundary tells them no. Principles become visible when compromise offers a reward. What happens when appetite applies pressure? What happens when approval is available? What happens when money creates temptation or influence creates power? A principle that exists only when convenient is not governing the life. Convenience is governing the life. The fourth audit is character. Character is the container that makes gifts safe. Personality may attract you, talent may impress you, and ambition may excite you, but none of them can protect a shared future without faithfulness, self-control, steadiness, humility, integrity, and responsible communication. How do you evaluate character? Through repeated tests over sufficient time. That is how credible trust develops. Chemistry can appear in one evening. Character cannot. Character must be observed through disappointment, through correction, through inconvenience, through responsibility, through moments when nobody is watching and no applause is available. Now, character does not mean perfection. If perfection were the requirement, nobody would qualify. The decisive issue is what happens after failure. Is the failure acknowledged or concealed? Does the person accept responsibility or distribute blame? Are they teachable? Do they repair what they damaged? Does apology lead to consistent change or merely reset the same destructive cycle? Do not only examine whether someone falls, examine how they respond to the fall. Ownership reveals maturity. Repeated excuses reveal resistance. The fifth audit is contribution. What does each person tangibly strengthen in the other? What responsibilities is each prepared to carry in a shared future? Contribution is more than encouragement. It includes discipline, labor, consultation, sacrifice, truth, and dependable action. One person may strengthen peace. Another may bring organization. One may provide wise correction. Another may create stability during pressure. The gifts can differ, but the contribution must be real, and contribution must not become carrying. Helping supports someone who accepts responsibility. Carrying removes responsibility from someone who refuses it. Helping develops capacity. Carrying can enable immaturity. Helping may be tiring for a season. Carrying becomes a permanent system that exhausts the rescuer while protecting the irresponsibility of the rescued. Take a page and draw a line down the middle. On one side, write what this relationship consistently strengthens. On the other, write what this relationship consistently weakens. Does it strengthen prayer, discipline, honesty, focus, confidence, service, stewardship, and peace? Or does it weaken sleep, clarity, boundaries, integrity, productivity, and emotional stability? Do not record isolated moods. Every healthy relationship has difficult days. Look for repeated patterns. Patterns reveal what the relationship is producing. Now bring the entire audit together with one question. Does this connection produce greater peace, clarity, obedience, focus, responsibility, and capacity in both people? Or must one person become smaller for the relationship to survive? If your growth must be hidden, if your convictions must be negotiated away, if your responsibilities must be neglected, and if your identity must continually shrink to preserve another person's comfort, chemistry is charging you too much for companionship. Say the 5 words aloud. Identity, destination, principles, character, contribution. Again, identity, destination, principles, character, contribution. Here is your homework. Answer every category privately before discussing it together. Why privately? Because you must discover what you honestly believe before another person's emotion begins editing your answers. Then compare the answers calmly. Do not merely compare language. Compare patterns, decisions, and demonstrated responsibility. You now possess a framework that can convert vague feelings into observable evidence. But remember, an audit reveals the evidence. It does not automatically decide the level of access. Wisdom must still determine what that evidence should permit. Emotional closeness must never outrun demonstrated trust. You do not give somebody control of the steering simply because you enjoyed the first mile together. Access to your private struggles, major decisions, finances, family, and future plans should increase only as responsibility is proven. Write this down. Access must grow at the speed of trust, not at the speed of excitement. This is where prayer becomes practical. Prayer is not merely an emergency response after a relationship has produced damage. Prayer is a pause before attachment. It slows appetite long enough for discernment to notice what emotion may overlook. What should you notice? Motives, inconsistencies, peace and pressure, focus and distraction, promises and patterns. Prayer does not make you afraid of people. It makes you sober about influence. But do not take this audit and turn it into a renovation project. You are not called to rebuild another adult against their will. You may encourage growth, you may speak truth, you may offer support, but you cannot choose maturity, character, or responsibility on someone else's behalf. If your future depends on who they might become after you repair them, you are not evaluating a relationship. You are financing a fantasy. Now, what is a boundary? A boundary is not punishment. Punishment tries to make another person suffer. A boundary clarifies responsibility. It says, this belongs to me. That belongs to you. And this is what must be demonstrated before deeper access becomes wise. After the audit, 3 responses may be appropriate. First, continue observing without escalating commitment. You do not owe greater access simply because someone wants a faster answer. Second, establish a clear boundary and observe the response. Mature people may dislike a boundary, but they can respect it. Controlling people treat every limit as betrayal. Third, withdraw when the relationship continually requires you to compromise conviction, responsibility, or identity. Do not judge everything by one conversation. One pleasant evening does not prove alignment, and one disagreement does not disprove it. Patterns under pressure and across time must govern the decision. Now identify one area where emotional access has moved faster than trust. Is it private information, money, family involvement, future promises, decision-making power? Write down one concrete correction you will make not next year, but now. Discernment does not rush commitment, control people, or confuse boundaries with cruelty. It gives access according to evidence. And the goal of discernment is not fear of relationship. It is the freedom to recognize the kind of union purpose was meant to produce. The healthiest partnership is not one passenger dragging another down the road. It is 2 responsible people who understand the destination, accept the governing principles, and agree to carry the duties of the journey. Neither person enters the vehicle saying, "Complete me." Each one arrives with identity, responsibility, and an assignment. Then partnership creates a trustworthy environment where both assignments can mature, contribute, and cooperate. That is the purpose of relationship. Not the destruction of individuality, but the coordination of responsibility. Chemistry without direction eventually becomes friction. Why? Because energy cannot solve disagreement about destination. But attraction joined to compatible purpose, tested character, shared values, and mutual contribution can become durable partnership. It can produce peace without passivity, support without dependency, correction without control, and sacrifice without the loss of self. So, reject desperation. You do not need to grant permanent access merely because you fear being alone, but reject cynicism too. You do not need to become suspicious of love because discernment requires patience. Love is not the enemy. Ignorance is dangerous. Emotion is not the enemy. Emotion without government is dangerous. Give love the protection of knowledge. Give it prayer before attachment, boundaries before confusion, observation before commitment, and time before trust. Let chemistry begin the conversation, but never allow it to make the final decision. Now say this aloud and make it your standard. I will not ask chemistry to make a decision that purpose must approve. Again, I will not ask chemistry to make a decision that purpose must approve.